Namaste, aloha, and welcome to the Yoga Wisdom of the Bhagavad Gita night. My name is Janapati Das, and thank you so much for tuning in. Please accept my most humble obeisances, and thank you for taking this opportunity to engage in some discourse on the Bhagavad Gita as it is, translated by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. At this moment, I'd like to offer my most humble obeisances unto my spiritual teacher, Jagadguru Siddha Swarupananda Paramahamsa Srila Prabhupada, whose mercy, from his mercy, I have been able to give this class and teach you a little bit about the Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita is such a huge and important scriptural writing. There's no end to what you can discourse about its wisdom. And this is the wisdom of the Bhagavad Gita. So we are talking about, tonight we will be talking about what it means to be wise, truly wise, or using one's intelligence in spiritual life. At this moment, I'd actually like to engage in the most important activity of transcendental knowledge and self-realization and meditation, and that is kirtan. Kirtan is the hearing and repeating of Krishna's holy names. So that's what I'm going to do right now. In this practice, what you'll do is listen to me sing the first time through, and the second time through, sing back with me. So it's sort of a call and response, but with the Zoom and Facebook Lives, you can only really sort of suppose, if you're in a group, you could actually do it back and forth, but you can sing with me a second time through. So first I'd like to sing a mantra to offer my respects to my spiritual master, and then of course to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his associates. Lord Chaitanya, of course, is non-different than Sri Krishna, and in this day and age he gave us the method of sacrifice and self-realization by the hearing and chanting of his holy names. So please join in with me. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Siddha Swarupananda Paramahamsa Nitinamine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Siddha Swarupananda Paramahamsa Nitinamine Aja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasudeva Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Aja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasudeva Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Gauranga, Jaya Jaya Gurudev, Jaya Jaya Gauranga, Jaya Jaya Gurudev, Jaya Jaya Srila Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Gurudev, Jaya Jaya Srila Prabhupada. Haribo was born in the darkness of ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. So, thank you very much for tuning in. We are going to, or I am going to, we're going to discuss the verses from the Bhagavad Gita, read some of the purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. So I'd like to take the opportunity to offer my most humble obeisances unto my spiritual grandfather, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, and thank him for his mercy upon us by translating the Bhagavad Gita and doing so much more, bringing the science of God to the Western countries. Without Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, I would not be here giving this class about the Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita, of course, is the Bhagavan, which means the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It's very important to note because there are a lot of translations of the Bhagavad Gita, so-called translations, that are not quite accurate because, for one reason or another, most of the translators are envious of Bhagavan, of Krishna, Sri Krishna. They want to have their own twist upon this. They don't really have any kind of lineage. Maybe they have some kind of material intelligence to be able to translate Sanskrit, but not really to delve into it. Without the mercy of the spiritual master, the pure self-realized soul, one cannot enter into the science of Bhagavad Gita, even though they may be able to do many tricks with their material mind. And this is what we're going to discuss tonight in Chapter 2, about the idea of real buddhi, with this is in Sanskrit known as buddhi, or intelligence. What is the means for using one's intelligence in spiritual life? So the Bhagavad Gita, of course, is the song of God. It is the science of God. It is the eternal love message between and relationship between the living entity and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. In this story, as we know, Arjuna, who is a great warrior, is distraught and doesn't really understand why he should be. I mean, it's kind of interesting. If you know this backstory from the Mahabharata, you know that actually this war is very justified because of the things that the son of Dhritarashtra and his brothers had done against the Pandava brothers, had sort of escalated into this sort of situation where there's this great war, the Battle of Kurukshetra. And the war was justified. Sometimes war is justified. Many times in the material world, we see wars. There are many situations which are fought out of fighting over land or fighting over sort of situations, but some people think that they're sanctified by God or whatnot. But the Battle of Kurukshetra, of course, had the Supreme Personality of Godhead driving the chariot of Arjuna. And Arjuna didn't, being a very compassionate sort of person, didn't want to kill his brothers and relatives that were spread out on both sides of the battlefield here. And Krishna, and of course Arjuna utilized his ability to comprehend Vedic injunctions, what were known as Vedic injunctions, and we'll be getting into that, why the Vedic system had these sort of the Vedas and the different kinds of sacrifices and rules and regulations that people needed to follow in the system, and what the purpose of that was. So Arjuna, of course, was explaining to Krishna why he thought all these reasons, rules, and regulations that were set up, why it was a bad idea to fight this battle. But Krishna basically started to lay out the science of Bhakti Yoga to him. And one of the very first things that comes with anything in this material world is understanding identity. And Krishna had laid out the idea that for the soul there is never birth nor death. So the soul, the living entity, that there is an actual living entity, the true identity of all of us is spiritual jiva, or spirit soul. Aham brahmasmi, I am a spirit soul. I am not this material body, I'm not this material mind. I am not the designations that go, or the so-called idea of what my identity is, based on this body and the mind. I'm actually a spirit soul, eternally spirit, same person, is eternally, temporarily passing through these different bodies. So Krishna is laying out, well, all these people that you know on the battlefield, they're all Jivatma souls. They are temporarily playing in this role in this life, and whether or not they're killed in this battle, they will be killed. Their body will die. And so this is a very, very important first point that Krishna explains to Arjuna, and then he lays out many other things. So what we're going to do is we're going to get into chapter 2, which is entitled "The Content of the Gita Summarized." And if you have a copy of the Bhagavad Gita in Bhaktivedanta's translation, of course, it's entitled "As It Is," because it is as it is, as putting Krishna as the center of this whole of reality, So I'm going to read chapter 2 text. Well, I'm going to actually start from backing up to 49 and reading through a few of these texts here, because it's actually a very important point, because we've established the idea that there is a Jivatma soul within the body. The body will die, but the soul continues regardless. And then we get into this idea of what the activity or karma, which is action or activity, is. So I'll read this, and I'll read some of the purports by Bhaktivedanta, and we'll get into this. So Dhananjaya, so Krishna is telling Arjuna, Dhananjaya is another name of Arjuna. Rid yourself of all fruitive activities by devotional service, and surrender fully to that consciousness. Those who want to enjoy the fruits of their work are misers. Text 50. A man engaged in devotional service rids himself of both good and bad actions even in this life. Therefore strive for yoga, O Arjuna, which is the art of all work. Text 51. The wise engaged in devotional service take refuge in the Lord and free themselves from the cycle of birth and death by renouncing the fruits of action in the material world. In this way they can attain that state beyond all miseries. Text 52. When your intelligence has passed out of the dense forest of delusion, you shall become indifferent to all that has been heard and all that is to be heard. So just to back up a little bit in what we're explaining, we've already established the idea that the living entity is not the body or the mind, but is an independent spiritual entity that is us. So it's not, oftentimes we think of, okay, well, I'm this body with a soul. Like a lot of people say, my soul. it's not my soul. It begs to ask, when you say it's my soul, who are you, right? So this just goes back to this idea of materialism, that somehow we're this chemical reaction, and consciousness is spurned on by the chemical reactions of the body. But actually we've found that in analytical study of this idea that the chemicals changing in our body every 3 to 5 years, that consciousness cannot be, the identity of the living entity cannot be spurned on by the actions of the chemicals, because the chemicals are constantly coming and going out of the body and being replaced. So there obviously is another spiritual energy, which is the jivatma, that is generating the body, making the body continue, and the chemicals moving through. So the idea of fruitive activities, as explained in this verse here, which is good and bad actions, and the idea of fruitive activity. So this idea of action is, of course, karma. Karma is a term that means action. A lot of times people think of karma as like something you're going to get, but actually good and bad karma is just the reaction of karma, right? So in other words, we have karmic action, which is the things that you do in the material world, and it really is depending on who you do it for, right? If you do it for your own pleasure, or if you do it for the pleasure of the Supreme. So karma yoga is action in service to God. And Krishna explained this to Arjuna very clearly, saying that just engage in karma yoga for my benefit without the desire for any kind of reactions or any kind of fruitive activity from it. So the fruitive activity, you think about fruit, it's like a tree grows fruit. In other words, the action of one's karma in this world is like the tree, the activities that you do, and those activities will produce certain kinds of fruits. Most people, 99.99% of people in this world, do those actions to get the fruits to try to enjoy, right? So, as is Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada has said in his purport on the 51st text, out of ignorance, only less intelligent people try to adjust the situation by fruitive activities, thinking that the resultant actions will make them happy. So instead of thinking, okay, doing something in the service of God, which is what Krishna is asking Arjuna to do in this battle, do this as a service to me, do it for me. Abandon all these varieties of religions and just surrender unto me. That is the ultimate pinnacle of the Bhagavad Gita, actually, is to give up all varieties of religious activities, of different kinds of ideas, of what's going to make me fruitive activities and things like that, to engage in the service of the Lord. That's why he says, the wise engaged in devotional service take refuge of the Lord and free themselves from the cycle of birth by renouncing the fruits of action in the material world. So one takes shelter of the lotus feet of Krishna. And with that, they can actually, as said, when you take shelter of Mukunda, which is another name. Mukunda, of course, this comes from the word mukti, who is a name of Krishna, the one who actually gives liberation to the living entity, or frees them from the suffering of the material world. It's said that when you take shelter of Krishna, this material world is like a great ocean. And even it's said by my spiritual teacher that even if you have an ability to be a super swimmer in the ocean, if you're stuck out in the middle of the ocean, it doesn't matter your capabilities of how strong you are as a swimmer. You will not last very long. You might be able to last, if you're, have good breath capacity, you may be able to last longer than the one who doesn't, but eventually you will be swallowed up by the ocean. So it's taking surrender of the lotus feet of Krishna, that is the lowest point, the most point of humility. One can actually achieve crossing this ocean of material suffering very easily in the boat of the spiritual master and Krishna, which is really non-different. The spiritual master is the confidential devotee of Krishna. In this case, Krishna is acting as Arjuna's spiritual master, even though he is also the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The spiritual master, my spiritual master, Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, and others are the confidential servants of Krishna. Therefore, they take the lifeline that has been given to them by their spiritual master all the way back to Krishna, has been handed to them, and throws it to the living entity. He says, here, take hold. Now you can choose to say, I don't know about that. That doesn't look very strong. I think I can handle it out here. I've got it together. I can swim this ocean, which is a form of arrogance and envy, And actually Arjuna, although he was an elevated devotee of Krishna, he had a certain kind of envy and arrogance to think that, well, I think I know what's best here, Krishna. This is what I'm going to do. And these are the reasons why I'm going to do it. And it was not going to work out that way. Krishna was saying, even if you go off to the forest, which was what Arjuna was like, I just want to leave the kingdom behind, go out and not fight this battle, and go off and be, meditate in the forest as a yogi. And Krishna was saying, no, you'll still have to act. You'll still have to have karmic reactions, and you'll be doing it outside of what I want you to do. And so this comes back to this point that, the one who has accepted the refuge, or taking refuge, or taking shelter, or just surrendered to Krishna, and they are wise. They have the ability to discern the qualities of what the spiritual master is teaching them, what Krishna is teaching them, and be able to know the relationships of these things in their life with themselves and their spiritual master and Krishna, and they know what kind of action, what kind of karma they need to take, what kind of action they need to take to be able to get out of the cycle of birth and death. Because this cycle, this samsara cycle of birth and death, right? We were saying the living entity is constantly, as it said here, never was there a time when we did not exist, nor any the kings or anybody in this battlefield is eternally existent. And for the embodied soul, right? The embodied soul. I'm going to go back to that. I'm drawing a blank, but I'm going to go ahead and read that, because it's an important point to come back to this other thing. Right. As the embodied soul continually passes in this life from youth to middle age to old age, the living entity is moving through. It will pass into another body at the time of death. And the self-realized soul, or the wise one, understands that as long as we're going to engage in this envious of God, separate of God, thinking we know what's best, thinking of we've got it under control, this is our world, this is what is my pleasure, not Krishna's pleasure, then we will continually have to reap the karma, the good and bad reactions of the things that we do. And there's a lot of things that we do in this life, from everything to walking across the street, we're killing all kinds of living entities. Even as a vegetarian, you have to kill certain kind of living entities, and from the vegetables that you pull out of the ground, or the bugs and microbes or whatever that are living there, you have to kill those things. But the one who engages in the service of Krishna, actually, it's said that the karmic reaction, there is no karmic reaction on that, good or bad. So you could be doing good things for good pious activities, and you would not incur any karma if it was done in the service for Krishna. So this point that we read all the way through, that the fact that when your intelligence has passed out of the dense forest of delusion, you shall become indifferent to all that has been heard and all that is to be heard. So one's intelligence, we have this sort of, right, different levels of material coverings, right? We have there's the jivatma, which is spiritual in essence, and then you have the gross physical body, earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, and then we have a subtle covering of mind, intelligence, and then the ahankara, or false ego, or the concept that I am this body, right? So these are very gross to very subtle coverings of the living entity, or the jivatma, situated in the heart. So we have sort of, you can see the gradations, right? We have sort of the earth, and water, it becomes a little bit lighter, air becomes a little bit lighter, and then ether, and then with mind, intelligence, and false ego, very light, subtle coverings. The mind, of course, is also a material covering as well, a subtle material covering. And the intelligence exists ultimately to be utilized in a way to attain God consciousness. And so this idea of intelligence, real intelligence, which culminates in wisdom, true wisdom, is understanding aham brahmasmi, I am spiritual in essence. I am not my material body nor my mind. I am not I know my identity as spiritual, part and parcel, same spiritual energy as the Supreme, and I know my position as not being the same. I'm not soham. I'm not the all one, God, which is a philosophy of yoga philosophy. Sometimes that people believe that we're all God, but we forgot that we're God. But actually, no, we are differentiated. So we are the minute particle of spiritual energy, but we are dominated by the Supreme Soul, or Krishna. And we have a function while we're here. And this function, as we're talking about here, is understanding that in my identity and in my position, I have a function of engaging in loving service to Krishna, engaging in loving service to God. That is my eternal function. That is a function that I should be engaging in this life to be able to develop. It's an engagement that I've forgotten to do. And this idea of, in this particular verse, the Vedic system I was talking about had certain kind of rules and regulations that would help people elevate their consciousness, but it was still a very materialistic kind of idea, but with the ideas in the Vedas to help people elevate themselves spiritually to come to a point where they would come to know bhakti yoga, or ultimately the ultimate goal of life. In this day and age of Kali, the Kali Yuga age, which is an age of quarrel, chaos, and confusion, there is no need for Vedic rich rules and regulations and fire sacrifices, or different kinds of sacrifices, or offering oblations to the forefathers or whatnot, because all this ultimately becomes just mired in this sort of dense forest of delusion, in the sense that we already are so fallen in this age and so confused and covered up that we don't even know how to do even these basic rules and regulations. We're just like full-on materialists. So for our great fortune, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in this age of chaos and quarrel and confusion, appeared 500 years ago. The Supreme Personality of Godhead appeared as Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to give us a very easy and simple process to practice, and that is the hearing and repeating of Krishna's names. That it is the most enjoyable an easy thing to do. It's much easier than to sit for, however many years. In the past ages, people used to meditate and eat air and do yogic practices and raise the life air. And there are people who try to do that nowadays, but you don't need to have that. It's so difficult. It's much more effective and easy to do to chant Krishna's names. And this practice actually is the, true refuge of taking refuge in God. And not only is it taking refuge in God, it's letting God take control of your life and help purify your heart so that you can see your loving relationship with God. I'm going to read some of these purports because they're so beautiful. Starting from 49. But one Bhaktivedanta says in his purport, one who has actually come to understand one's constitutional position as the eternal servitor of the Lord. That's the point, eternal servitor, right? Gives up all engagement save working in Krishna consciousness. As already explained, Buddhi Yoga means transcendental loving service to the Lord. Such devotional service is the right course of action for the living entity. Only misers desire to enjoy the fruit of their own work just to be further entangled in material bondage. So it's just why he says later that out of ignorance, less intelligent people, so they're not really utilizing their intelligence. They think they're so intelligent. And, we have material intelligence and people who think that they're so very intelligent. They know so many things about, the material universe or the mating rituals of this Brazilian dung beetle, and they spend their whole life studying papers, writing papers, giving lectures on these things, only to find that kind of intelligence or knowledge doesn't really help people with the deeper questions of life, like who are you and what should you be doing here and what happens when you die, So it's a very important point that to utilize your intelligence, and in the process of all these things, the spiritual practices, one's intelligence is actively utilized so that they can understand. They're actually wise. They understand all these things. They understand this is what I should be doing with my life. This is who I am. This is my relationship with God. This is how I should be acting towards other people. Otherwise, it becomes a less intelligent thing, because people just chase after this sort of phantasmagoria or mirage in the desert, thinking that, oh, look there. Oh, look there. There's happiness. I'm going to go after that. That'll be happy. I'm going to go there. And they just descend further into the desert. As my spiritual master would say, the spiritual master comes to that person who is suffering intensely because of their desires to chase mirages in the material world for their happiness, and say, I can see that you're suffering. There's an actual oasis over here. And then the people are just like, oh, you crazy? No, I'm just suffering so much. I need to chase this mirage out here. And it's like, oh, the oasis is right there. It's just so close to you. So many people are not actually actively using their intelligence so adequately. Continuing on, except for work. So they were saying misers, right? Misers want to, like Scrooge, they got counting the pennies. Like, let me accumulate all these things, and they're just really miserable. They're extremely miserable and unhappy people. It's misers. Only misers desire to enjoy the fruit of their own work just to be further entangled in material bondage. So they just want to enjoy, but they don't realize they're creating a situation that makes it more and more difficult for them to really understand where real happiness can be found. Except for work in Krishna consciousness, all activities are abominable because they continually bind the worker to the cycle of birth and death. One should therefore never desire to be the cause of work. And here we say work meaning the activities or the karma, right? Everything should be done in Krishna consciousness for the satisfaction of Krishna. Misers do not know how to utilize the assets of riches which they acquire by good fortune or by hard labor, right? Another wonderful analogy is that it's like my spiritual master has talked about, and Bhaktivedanta as well, is the she-ass, right? The donkey, or I guess it's the he-ass or whatever it is, right? He-ass and the she-ass. Is constantly just like trying to work really hard to get, a patch of grass or, sex life from the donkey, and is constantly getting kicked in the face by the other donkey. So, but just continually works really, really hard to try to squeeze out some kind of happiness in this material world, but just is getting so much misery. One should spend all energies working in Krishna consciousness, and that will make one's life successful. Will your life be perfect materially? Probably not, no, but you can actually deal with the situations. You can understand, and you can be happy because you know that this world is just a temporary flash in the pan, is that you're passing through, that things are going to happen, things will come about. You can deal with the life stresses. People are not very intelligent because they think if I just manipulate things in just a certain way, my life will be perfect, they'll be happy. But for some reason, this has never happened for anybody else in the history of humankind. And then you have a situation, and then all of a sudden, you're like Lahaina. You just have a beautiful house that's been in your generations, and it burns down completely, and you lose everything, or your family burns down. Or in the situation, like in Israel, where you're just like either living in the Gaza and you're just getting constantly harassed by Israel, or you're or bombed or killed or whatever, and then vice versa, you get bombed by you think, oh, I'm at a music festival and I'm really enjoying things, and it's just it's terrible because it's horrible where people just kill each other without even realizing who they are and what their purpose is. But the point is, of course, that people try so hard to try to manipulate the situation so that they can be happy materially, and then life just ends up kicking them in the face because of their karmic reaction of what they've done in their past lives. Misers do not know how to utilize the assets of riches which they acquire by good fortune or by hard labor. One should spend all energies working in Krishna consciousness, and that will make one's life successful. Like the misers, unfortunate persons do not employ their human energy in the service of the Lord. So because also, even if you're trying to enjoy things in the material world, which you can, and still serve Krishna, you just serve Krishna, and you can still enjoy things in this world, but to try to make that your goal, and then you find yourself in a situation where either sooner or later you have to leave this body, and if it's sooner, it's abrupt, or it's you watch it all disappear, or if it's later, you watch things fall apart on your body, and you see people grow up and leave the house, and that's just the reality of what happens. And then eventually you have to leave. You leave all those good things, all those good times behind. Whereas with your relationship with Krishna, you can develop that, and you just pick up where you left off in the spiritual world. So, continuing a little bit more, and then we'll chant some more. Since time immemorial, each living entity, this is from the verse, a man engaged in devotional service rids himself of both good and bad actions, even in this life. Therefore strive for yoga, O Arjuna, which is the art of all work. Since time immemorial, each living entity has accumulated the various reactions of his good and bad work. Those good and bad karma. So the karmic reaction is a real thing. You're constantly creating it. You're constantly receiving it. In the activities of service to Krishna, you actually do not incur karma. You actually burn off karma. As such, he is continuously ignorant of his real constitutional position. one's ignorance can be removed by the instruction of the Bhagavad Gita, which teaches one to surrender unto Lord Sri Krishna in all respects and become liberated from the chained victimization of action and reaction, birth after birth. Arjuna is therefore advised to act in Krishna consciousness, the purifying process of resultant action. It's a really wonderful statement, because as I was saying, it all starts with the very understanding of who am I, who am I really, and people grapple with this idea of identity. But the problem is that their concept of identity is purely based on the body and the mind. I am black, I am white, I am woman, I am man, I am straight, I am gay, I am transgender, I'm straight or whatever. I am a man, I'm a woman, I'm tall, I'm fat, I'm short, I'm a doctor, So all these kinds of things, they're either based on the mind or the body. They do not actually deal with the living entity, spiritual living entity. And so therefore, that incurs suffering and ignorance. Ignorance equals suffering. That's the formula. Ignorance equals suffering. If you don't understand who you are, you won't understand the purpose of your life. And if you don't understand the purpose of your life, you can't really be happy. So what we do, and as is said here at the very end of this purport, as it flew all across, Arjuna is therefore, so one's ignorance can be removed by the instruction of the Bhagavad Gita, right, which teaches one to surrender to Lord Sri Krishna in all respects and become liberated from the chain victimization of action, reaction, birth after birth. Arjuna is there advised to act in Krishna consciousness, the purifying process of resultant action. In the primary form of, highest form of purifying process in this day and age, because it's non-different than the Supreme Personality of God, is the hearing and repeating of Krishna's most holy names, or mantra meditation. And that's what we're going to do tonight. So thank you very much. Feel free to join in. And let's chant. Chant for peace. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Srimate Sita Swarupananda Paramahamsaya Namine Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Srimate Swarupananda Paramahamsaya Namine Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasudeva Bhakta Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasudeva Bhakta Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama Haribo, Nitago, Nitago, Haribo, Haribo, Nitago, Nitago, Haribo. One more time. Haribo, Nitago, Nitago, Haribo, Haribo, Nitago, Nitago, Haribo. Okay, Haribo, thank you so much for tuning in to Bhagavad Gita class tonight. I want to remind you that the library and the Facebook page has lots and lots of stuff on it already. We also have a YouTube channel, Yoga Kirtan Hawai'i, to which we have these videos uploaded as well. If you're interested in more of the science of Bhakti Yoga, you can go to sif.org for more information about yoga wisdom. Until then, have a wonderful evening. Aloha. Namaste.